Welcome back to another episode of Modified Rides Podcast. As usual, I'm your host, Brandon Burrell. Today, I have someone that's actually tied pretty heavily to the automotive aftermarket industry. We have Cesar, how you say your last name, Gracida?
Gracida, yes, sir.
And you were with RK Sports. So if you've done any kind of aftermarket modifications over the last, I don't know, tons of years. RK Sports, something that's been involved. So tell us a little bit to begin with about who you are and what RK Sport is.
Well, my name is Cesar. I'm the CEO of RK Sport. We are a fiberglass and carbon fiber restyling company. So we make fiberglass hoods, carbon fiber hoods, body kits. We also do urethane manufacturing and mold making as well. And yeah, we've been around since 1993. So actually celebrating our 30th anniversary this year.
Oh, wow. So this seems to be a big year for you guys then.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's been incredible. A lot of people that I talk to, um, without aging myself or themselves, they're like, "Oh yeah, you guys did like the Cavaliers, the Camaros, vehicles from way back in the mid '90s to the early 2000s when the import scene was just taking off." And now there's so you can see a good mixture of people that have been familiar with arcade sport from way back in the day to the current evolution of arcade sport, which we are one of the titans in the truck industry of aftermarket hoods.
I guess y'all are probably one of the few that's actually stayed around because I know back in the 90s, I had a Wings West body kit on my Honda, and I don't even think Wings West is around anymore, are they?
No, no, Wings West. Shout out to Billy Longfellow, a good friend of ours. He, founded Wings West with his partner, sold that. Then that turned into his next business venture being 3D Carbon. So 3D Carbon is still around. However, it's sold a few times. But yes, we are one of the very few companies that are still around and just still going.
So I guess before we get into the history of the company, let's kind of get into your history. How did you get involved in an aftermarket industry like this?
So before all of this, I was freelance photographer, videographer. My full-time job was working at Costco. I was there 8 years. And so working the morning shift, getting those hours in. And after that, I was just, hustling, guerrilla marketing, reaching out to any small business, as well as being friends with a lot of people in the music industry. Did a lot of event coverage. So for me, it was exciting to be able to share the stage with some of my favorite hip hop artists, underground hip hop artists, and turn around and build up my portfolio. But yeah, that's always been my passion is photography and video editing, and especially with when social media was beginning to people were beginning to be the pioneers of social media content creation and influencing. It was it was like the right sweet spot before entering my new career at RK Sport.
So with you doing the photography and videography stuff, did you mess with any automotive stuff, or was it mostly just the music stuff?
Zero, zero. Yeah, I was heavily into music, whether it was being a a MC myself, recording with friends as a hobby, then going to a lot of shows, freestyle sessions, at the house. Um, it was for me. It was just all about creating, really good, anything revolving hip hop. I wanted to be a part of, and I always had my camera with me. It wasn't until 2012 when my future father-in-law invited me to the SEMA show, and I'm like, I have no idea what that is. It's in Vegas. I'm like, say less. I'm there. I pulled up to Vegas, and as we're driving up, I'm just seeing all these crazy cars outside the South Hall. So this was it was it was I still can't explain my first feeling because I literally was speechless. I'm like, how are there this many modified rides everywhere. Like we haven't even stepped inside, and my camera, like I had to sit down and just like set up my gear because I've never stepped into a realm like this. A lot of people are shocked when they hear like I didn't really get into cars. I mean, I wanted to modify cars. I played Gran Turismo, Need for Speed, but I never really thought that this was this serious. And 2012 was my first year, and I I was sore for like almost a week, but with a smile from ear to ear because I could not believe what I witnessed. And put together a really cool video. At that time, he was the lead designer and mold maker at RK Sports. So I'm like, I can't thank you enough for this. Here's a little quick little video. They loved it. They posted on their at that time it was just a website. They didn't have a YouTube channel.
Yeah.
But uh, soon after, I was all giddy and I'm like, "What did you guys think? Did you like the video?" They're like, "No, it was cool. It's cool." But they didn't, social media was still such a brand new thing, and I'm like, well, is it on the website? Is like I want to show my friends where I was. I can show them my video, but I want them to believe me that there are companies like this.
Yeah.
And so every year I was begging them, can I go again? Can I go again? I'll do photos, I'll do photography, I'll do video. And it wasn't until 2014 the current at that time the marketing director was moving up to Washington to be a lot closer with his family. He calls me up, he's like, send your resume, and sent my resume, had an interview, tongue tied. It went really well, and I mean, the rest is history. I stepped into the aftermarket world with zero knowledge and experience, but it was it changed my life. It really did change my life, and I've met a lot of amazing people throughout this journey.
Anybody that's been to SEMA for the first time, I think we all have that same vision that you did. You get off that tram or get out of the taxi or whatever, and you walk up and it's like all these crazy vehicles, even on setup day, all these crazy
Yeah,
vehicles just there, and you're like, how is this even possible? I think that's one of the things that hooks people when they first go. I mean, I thought when I went in '04 for the first time, I was like, oh, it's just a one and done time, and now it's like I go every year. So did I know that I was going to do that in '04? Had no clue. I just thought it was a once in a lifetime gig. So I completely understand the shock and awe when you come around that corner there. So for sure.
yeah,
Did RK Sport have a booth that year that you were there, or was y'all just there
yes.
checking it out?
No, no. Much like a lot of companies, it was always a 1 year on, 1 year off deal. Really depended on, we RK Sport had great relationships with GM, Ford, and being a part of the SEMA project vehicles. And so anytime we got an opportunity to uh, get accepted and selected by GM or Ford, we got the very first Pontiac Solstice, the very first GTO, the Saturn Sky, a lot of the early GM vehicles
Yeah,
for SEMA, and basically developed body kits, hoods, and worked with a lot of amazing aftermarket companies. So whether we debuted them in GM's booth or Ford's booth, was always the dream, right? Or we had our very own 20 by 20 booth showcasing our product. And I mean, uh, we were one of the very few companies, at least in the composite world, that had booths at SEMA. Aside from Cybon, I think Cybon and now Anderson Composites were, I think, the only two composite companies that really showcased in the restyling world. And so historically, we were always in North Hall because that's the
yeah.
appropriate category. But once I joined, we moved up to the South Hall, and I was reintroduced into another world that I'm obsessed with, which is the truck industry.
Well, let's back up a little bit before you were at RK Sport. What created RK Sport? How did that company get their foot in the door to begin with?
So RK Sport comes from RK Smith. Bob Smith. He was a professional driver for Corvette. Did a lot of racing in IMSA, as well as man, I'm drawing a blank. But yes, he was a professional driver, and so he had a great relationship with GM. In 1991, 92, he was invited up to Detroit to take a look at the next generation Camaro. Saw the sketches, saw the prototype, and was blown away. He's like, dang, this thing is nice. What would be the F body? And so when it debuted, much like all of our opinions is, man, the prototype looks so much better. Why did you guys dumb it down? And so that was his question. It's like, what happened? You guys had an amazing prototype, an amazing sketch, and all, looked way better on paper. But this is not what this is not what's gonna sell. So the light bulb went on for him, and he goes, "Well, how do we get to this? What can we do?" And got a few, got some, was led in the right direction. Met with a few manufacturers in Oceanside, and started developing a body kit. And so the first body kit for the 1993 Camaro was debuted at the SEMA show. Polyurethane, fiberglass hood, wheels, tire suspension, the works. At that point, he drove into the parking lot in front of the Las Vegas Convention Center, just parked the car in front of it, just put some business cards, some flyers on it, walked into the show. So at that point, there was no SEMA show outside the convention center. Everything was inside. It was a true trade only
Yeah.
show. And so after that year, he goes back home, and his phone is just blowing up. I mean, a lot of people saw the vehicle. A lot of people saw the potential of, like, wait a minute, we can make a lot of introduce a lot of new items to the market for this Camaro. And so much like Wings West, and a lot of the other companies out there, it was a race. It was a race to the top. Who can develop the most for the Camaro? It was suspension, exhaust, superchargers, interior, exterior. Like, I think we had maybe about 200 product offerings that we worked with. And, we manufactured ourselves as well as worked with other people to develop as much as we can for this Camaro, and that's what took off. And RK Sport was born out of just the desire to bring something, the concept design to life. And so that it after that we just took off and hit it off with GM, and they're like, well, let's see what else you can do.
Well, I guess over the years, though, the body kit aspect has kind of dwindled back some. I know back in the 90s, everybody had a body kit. You had to have the big front bumper and the side skirts and the wings. Like, how has the progression of the custom automotive world affected what you produce?
It really challenges. You're right. At that time, we even did at one point did a fiberglass rear seat delete for subs. I mean, yeah, I think at this time, in present time, most people don't even care about audio to an extent. I hope I don't
Yeah.
get in trouble by people that push that, but back then it was all about the amps, the subs, the lighting. I mean, every detail mattered, and that was amazing to see, because, like I said, coming from Need for Speed, Midnight Club, and Gran Turismo, it was everything I couldn't afford, and driving cars I never thought I could afford and drive myself. Um, I spent hours on my PlayStation just modifying these cars, and to see this in in real time, and uh also from the business aspect of it, I was like, okay, there's a lot involved in this. Like, now I have access to, or now I have the network to communicate and reach out to all these amazing companies, and ask a lot of questions. And so going back when I started at RK Sport, I had no direction. I, was meeting with the owner, Mike, and I'm like, okay, what's the game plan? What are we working on this year? And I was going through the emails, kind of reverse engineering the mind process of what it is to be a director of marketing. And I was on my phone a lot. And so that was another big weird thing is like, I was a 9 to 5 guy. I'd clock in, work, clock out, and then get on my phone. But my job was to be on my phone and do research. And so it was a very big adjustment for me to go, okay, who is Arcade Sport? I had to essentially rewrite the story of Arcade Sport because we had zero presence online. And so it was, going back to the 90s and then looking through the catalogs, and I began to see less and less product offerings. 2008, we all hit the economy crashed, and that also really, affected the aftermarket industry because looking at our catalog and our website history, our forum history, I'm like, okay, there's there's a less and less chatter, but there's more and more inquiries of what to do next, what can we work on next. So you got a lot of people began to witness opportunities for vehicles or modifications that weren't traditional or weren't even heard of yet. I mean, it at that point, I think the biggest argument was, do you go static or do you go bags? In the mid 2000s, and like you said, the body kits. Fast and the Furious played a big role in that. With just who knew that you can watch a movie based on your passion, and that was huge. The mid 2000s was certainly the import and the tuner phase. We had our import fighter. We made JDM style body kits for the Cavalier, the Sunfire, the Grand Am, the GTO, and the Saturn Roadsters. And little by little, as the economy was evolving, it was like, okay, now we focus on the core vehicles, the muscle cars, the Mustangs, the Camaros, the Corvettes. And with those, I mean, it's in our American muscle DNA. It's all about power, suspension, and handling. And so that became the focus. It was no longer about aesthetics. It was mainly just performance. And so it helped us evolve the company as also introducing functional design, the rammer hood. What can we do to help performance? What can we do to keep the engine temperatures down? And still working on aesthetics, but sneaking in that design when people were like, I want that hood because it's the only hood available to clear my, my supercharger, my blower. Or I want the spoiler, add some downforce, or just completes the look on the back end. There's just, slight touches missing on the back end that really helps us, focus on the exhaust or, any other type of small aesthetics that they wanted on the vehicle. But yeah, it challenged us to simplify the look of the vehicle to where you're getting asked, hey, is this, a new trim line that GM introduced or Ford introduced? So I think the best way to put it is making the simplest aesthetics was probably the hardest job in our world, in the restyling world.
So
That
you didn't do a lot of like the cow hood type stuff. Y'all always did more of the ram air type stuff, the cleaner lines, or did you do the cow hoods as well?
we did a few cow hoods, like, so for instance, with the Corvette and the Camaro, we had a great relationship, still have a great relationship with Whipple. Whipple always had those big blowers, and so we did introduce some cows for the Corvettes to clear the blowers. We it was even in the name, the Arcade Sport Whipple hood, because it provided a solution to that, extra clearance that you needed from installing your Whipple supercharger.
Yeah.
Once we began to step into the muscle, the muscle cars as well as the truck industry, um, before, in the mid 2000s, 2009, 2010 and beyond, as more and more trucks were being modified, um, it was looking at the functional design of having cooler airflow provided for the intake for diesel trucks, and so the functional design did began to take a more dominant presence in our design approach. We had heat extractor vents, so allowed us to still advertise as one of the benefits to purchasing our hoods. But yes, throughout the years, we began to move more towards the ram air design.
Now, with these changes like this, is it? I guess you started with the body kit stuff, and then morphed into doing the hoods and everything, or was it all at one time?
It when I started in 2014, it was 2016 when I saw the a report saying that for the first time in 40 years, truck sales surpassed all vehicle sales. So I'm like, okay, so there's a lot more people buying trucks right now. And the muscle cars, that it was our strongest market, we began to see less and less generations being designed year after year. It's that love-hate relationship with OEMs. It's like sometimes you love that a vehicle doesn't change for 10 years, and sometimes you're just bored, or you have nothing new to debut because the vehicle has been around for 10 years.
Yep.
So there was also a rise in a lot of overseas manufacturing and counterfeiting, and so we always took pride in our original design. Everything was done by hand. Everything is still done by hand. Nothing is ever machined or done on computer. So from a design standpoint, we began to shine in our originality, but the industry as a whole became far more saturated. So there was a lot of like the same look for every car. And so when it came to body kits, the economy was still like, working its way back. And so the big, it wasn't a question of like, well, I really like the way your kit looks. It was more of like, can you sell me your kit at this price point, which is overseas price point.
Yeah.
I'm like, that's pennies to the dollar. I can't. We're a U.S. based manufacturer. We hire in the United States. We buy in the United States. We distribute in the United States and globally. But from a price standpoint, there's nothing we can do to compete in our own market, our own domestic market, um, and make a profit. I mean, nobody's in it to lose money every time they sell a product. So that as the truck industry evolved and grew, we were almost the only company offering aesthetics for the trucks outside of bumper, suspension, tires, and wheels. I mean, a
Yeah.
hood really does, it's a large item. I mean, it changes that front end. So we took that position and ran with it.
How many how many different vehicles do you manufacture for now?
So looking at our catalog, we have, so every late model truck, with the exception of the Titan, we have a hood for everything 2005 and up, essentially. And we have been condensing our truck catalog, just as less and less demand, less and less inquiry, and making room for new products. For the cars, we still manufacture and sell our Pontiac Solstice kits. Believe it or not, we have
Wow.
the right behind me. You see a Pontiac Solstice hood right there. I being the beauty of being the only manufacturer. I mean, there's about 60,000 of these cars on the road,
Oh
and
wow.
anytime one of them gets in an accident, guess who they email and call for a bumper replacement or a hood replacement?
What's
So
your number one sold item though?
Ford, Ford,
F
F one
one
fifty
fifty or
hoods, F-150 hoods, F-150 bumper spoilers, splitters, balance. It's got so many names for it, but the combination of our whether it's a rammer hood or heat extractor hood with that splitter, just changes that front end of the F-150s. And I mean, they're all over social media. These single cab trucks are just the craze right now. And the Ford F-150 line has been our strongest seller since 2015.
You'd think more manufacturers would make standard cab trucks easier to get, but like I looked at doing one when I did my Sierra, but you couldn't get any higher trim level other than a work truck that was stripped and had the crappy dash in it and all that. So it led me to the crew cab. But you would think that with the market being so big on single cab trucks that these manufacturers would produce more of those, but
Yeah,
I guess not.
it and it's a question I've never had the opportunity to ask at the SEMA show to any of the reps. But I don't know. I don't know what it is about these OEMs that give them that hesitation. I mean, look at what Ford did with the F-150 introducing the Raptor line. To this day, outside of the TRX, no one dared to challenge whether it was, whether they thought it was a phase, whether they thought it was just unpractical in their consumer base. Who knows? I mean, Ford has certainly introduced the world after the Raptor that, I mean, it's there's something here. And I mean, they race in Baja. Not I can't think of any other OEM that can challenge them and say, yeah, well, we can race in Baja with the factory truck. But yeah, the single cab market, I honestly, I will say it wasn't until 2018, 2019 where I began to see a bigger presence in the single cab market for the new and the old body styles as well. I love a crew cab. I love cruising around with the homies. I love being able to take a lot of people with me. But then you get into a single cab and you're especially these highly modified trucks, you're
Oh
in a
yeah,
race car. That ain't a truck, that's a race car. Like
those
it's
Texas trucks like
insane.
that.
Yeah, I mean, those guys in Houston are just making a name for themselves. They've walked everybody at the Freedom Factory. It's been amazing to see, especially the 21 platform. I've never seen so. I've yet to see just a single cab F-150 off the lot stay stock for more than a day. I mean, even at the dealership, they have that. Before the sleeper package was introduced, everybody had a Whipple on these. I'm like, how the heck are you guys able to put Whipples on them like from day one? Like, we haven't even put 10 miles into this, and you're already in like the mid eights, the nines. It's
Got a
insane.
I got a local guy that just bought a 24 F-150 and did the dealership did the supercharger and everything on it. They went to load the tune and there was no tune for the 24. So he's been
Yeah,
sitting for about 2 months dead in the water, can't even drive the truck. It's just sitting in a garage because they're waiting on Whipple to come out with that tune for it. It's like the blower's already on the truck. There's nothing he can do about it.
putting the cart before the horse, right?
But it was something I guess that Ford had offered. They did the supercharger there at the dealership the day it come off the truck. It came off the transport truck and thought he'd be able to hop in it the next day and roll, and it just didn't. So
Yeah, it's the current challenge right now with every year we're getting less and less freedom to work on our own vehicles and access the electronics in our vehicles. Um, and it's a very weird, like you said, Ford introduced the FP 700 package. I mean, it's not just Ford. I mean, even Tesla, having to release software updates for your electric truck. Like, how are these features available on the truck, but they're locked? It's like, I feel like I'm surprised there aren't hackers that haven't, jailbroken a Tesla yet, Cybertruck yet, to access all the features, or maybe they have. I don't know. It's still a brand new world that I'm not too fully involved in. But yeah, it's crazy that Ford and Dodge have this amazing competition with each other, from Dodge releasing 1,000 horsepower vehicles off the lot to, offering the Elephant crate engine. It's pretty crazy to see these high horsepower numbers that we only dreamed of maybe 10, 15 years ago.
You've seen the Chevy, the high end truck they just released, the Fox truck or whatever.
Yeah, yeah. And I, I'm glad you brought that up because I hit up Carter Reed, who was involved in the project, and I was like, congratulations, because you guys executed a very, very unique truck
I didn't
that,
realize Carter was involved with that.
yeah,
Which I guess
yeah.
Fox, I
So
guess that would make sense.
yeah, well, I mean, you have to remember, Fox has been acquiring a lot of great companies. So they own Tuscany Motors. So they make the Harley Davidson edition trucks, a
Okay.
lot of the Black Ops trucks, Shelby trucks. So it's this big family that they own Baja kits. So suspension wise, they I know I'm sure this was a long time in the making. But this Fox factory truck is the offspring of what they've been working on and what they have been manufacturing for such a long time. I mean, Fox has a great relationship with the OEMs in developing the suspension for the Raptor R, the TRX, and Chevy. So they got the suspension game down. With Baja kits, they were able to introduce long travel kits, to as a turnkey product on this vehicle, lighting wise, in even the restyling aspect. So they've tapped into a lot of the companies that they're learning from and partnering with, and introduce a truck that is really unique. This isn't off the shelf items that you can just buy like you do with the Ford. The F-150. You can find multiple aftermarket companies to create your own Raptor.
Yeah.
But everything is interchangeable. Nothing on that Fox factory truck is, interchangeable to an extent. Especially like the all custom body. I mean, you'd look at that front end. I'm like, yeah, this isn't something that was just, you cut a hole here and weld here, and boom, I can have my own Fox factory truck. Not a lot of people will understand what went into, executing that vehicle. And I mean, they're only limiting that to 500 trucks, so it won't be the last project that we'll see out of Fox Factory. And it's the answers to everybody asking where's GM in all of this. The Lingenfelter tried with the Reaper. I don't know if you remember that bad boy. Ever since then, it was like GM's like, you guys can handle this, and so Fox answered that call.
Well, where do you see the market of the aftermarket, like the hoods and stuff, the stuff that you guys offer? Where do you see that going with the industry? Do you see it growing? Do you see changes in styling? Like, where do you see it going?
Um, it's exciting. So we have our work cut out. We're currently developing hoods for the 2023 and up Ford Super Duty. We're still developing hoods for the Toyota Tundra, the Titan. So, I mean, not the Titan, I'm sorry, the Tacoma. And we are stepping we're going backwards as well. I've been approached by a lot of people to introduce rammer hoods to the Ford OBS, the Chevy OBS, the square bodies, because that market is insane as well. I mean, the amount of mods and the amount of work that goes into these trucks is really, really admirable and respectable, because it's almost like, you know they can hold their own against a lot of these late model trucks. The same customer may, or the same client may have even both, but they love the nostalgia. There's a lot of sentimental value in rebuilding these trucks that we historically we've been hesitant to approach this just because we design on the vehicle, and it's very critical that we can design on a untouched or slightly or very lightly modified vehicle,
Yeah.
because if the fenders are twisted, if the chassis bent a little, and we're designing something on just this specific truck and this specific vehicle, if there's something off on it and we make a mold out of it, those changes or that modification that we may or may not be aware of might not translate onto universally onto the next vehicle. And so we're still very selective on which trucks we will design for, um, unless you come out with unless we step into the entire body replacement, like Solomon did with Clyde. Carbon Clyde is a
Yeah.
project that I'm like looking at. I'm like, that's insane. I can't imagine what he's going through mentally and physically to see this through. But Brothers Composite, they're doing an amazing job. They have amazing um, amazing technology behind them to accomplish building a vehicle of that caliber.
I'd be scared to drive something like that. I'd be afraid, I'd hit the wrong bump and break something or whatever. Yeah, that truck's going to be insane when it's done for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. So as far as like the future of modifications and aftermarket, the restyling market for us, it's thinking of even stepping back into the small details, the engine trim, engine dressing, interior dressing. Hoods will always be a part of our DNA. It's Side skirts. Now people are asking for body kits on trucks. Shelby
Yeah.
Shelby has done a great job in dominating that market with that front end, but it's still missing the sides to complete that look. A nice roll pan. You're seeing a lot of spoilers on the tailgates. You're seeing a lot of spoilers on the roofs. So yeah, I mean, on one hand, the body kit is making a comeback, and so we did it with just the front bumper spoiler, and now we got to complete the look. So we are working on a body kit for the single cab F-150s and the crew cabs.
Nice. So you do all your molding and everything in house. I guess you have a development team that touches those when they come in.
Yes, yes. So right behind me, you can see all of our molds on the racking. We Right behind me, you see some of our finish hoods. Everything is done in house. We take the raw fiberglass, wet it out with resin, work on an open mold, and from scratch, finish it, distribute it, all in one facility. We've been doing that since day one. Um, we I'm back. When I took over RK Sport, I moved it back to Oceanside, where it was born. It was born here in Oceanside, and so it spent 10 years in Murrieta, California, a little 15 minutes north. During the pandemic, we moved to Austin, did our best to stay to make it happen in Austin. It didn't work out, and so now we're back in Oceanside. But yeah, throughout the whole process, everything has been done in house.
Is there is there something that you're, I guess, the more excited about that you currently have project on? I know you mentioned the OBS Ford stuff. Is that what your favorite thing is right now?
Yes, yes. Right now, I have a lot of catching up to do because when I was in Austin, I didn't have my R&D team that I have here in Oceanside. It's actually my father-in-law. My father, working with my father-in-law again, and just going back to the design process with him. So once we catch up with all of the current models of the new trucks that are out on the market right now, I'm very excited to dive into the OBS world. The mini truck world. It's certainly you know uh, uh, um, something that I've been watching for a long, long time. I've got a lot of great colleagues, and much like yourself, you've built a lot of really slammed trucks that I just drool and seen in person. I'm like, you guys are keeping the attention to detail alive. I mean, you and I know that walking the SEMA floor, sometimes you're amazed, and sometimes you're extremely shocked at
Yep.
the level of quality and even craftsmanship that goes into this. The SEMA crunch it's a term that kind of gives me chills because you can be January or even start in November and will still work, the midnight hour, burn the midnight oil, um, leading up to the SEMA show to finish these trucks. But when it comes to the OBS and even the slam vehicle, the slam truck world, um, detail matters because you have to get everything right. And so when I saw Cranberry, I was blown away. I'm like, dang, like there's nothing left untouched on this truck. I've yet to go to any of the like the Slamily reunion or scraping the coast. I've yet to go to any of those shows, just because I'm also very impatient. I'm like, I don't want to show up until I have something to offer.
Yeah.
Um, so I've been admiring from a distance.
Well, go have fun, walk the show. That's what it's about. But Uh, the one thing I've always tried to strive in all my builds, even back from the 90s, is to me, it was about the details. It's one of those ones when someone walks by and they're like, oh, that's cool. And then they look back again. They're like, wait a minute, I didn't see that. Or where was that when I walked by a minute ago? It's the little stuff that most people don't realize. Like I have people walk by my Sierra now and ask if my interior is stock. And I'm like, no, they don't. GM does not offer red interior like that. I'm like, well, it looks factory. I'm like, that's the whole point of this. You don't want it to look like it was just cobbled together. You want it to look factory, but not be factory.
hmm Yeah, absolutely. And you share the same sentiment and the goal that we do is, like, is this the new ZR1? Is this the new, Raptor? Is this the new TRD Pro? Um, you want those questions because you've achieved the aesthetic, the clean aesthetic design and the clean execution of a look, without going overboard,
Yeah.
without making it obvious. I think that's a better way to say it. It's like when you don't make it look obvious, that's very hard to accomplish. It's very, very hard to accomplish. And like you said, I mean, sometimes you're right. I'm reading the magazine, looking at the write up or looking at the company's evolved. I'm like, I know that company, or I was looking at this detail, looking at the engine bay. I didn't even notice or realize that. And then, I mean, granted, there's so much to admire and look at. And so when you miss those small details, you're like, dang, like that's respect for sneaking that in. Yeah, it's like I said, the slamda industry is certainly an industry that they hold their own, and they really have a tight knit community in that really contributes and works with each other. They rarely do you see a lot of the clout chasing that you see in the lifted market.
I think the technology has majorly changed the way these bag trucks and body drop trucks are built. Because back in the day, you were just taking tubular steel and cutting it and welding it together. Now you're plasma tables and CNC machines. Like you're building stuff that you couldn't build 10, 20, 30 years ago. Like it just physically wasn't possible. Like people making full, billet, control arms and stuff that wasn't possible back in the day. So I think the technology is stepping the game up on this. Of course, the price behind those parts are tremendous, but it's
Yeah,
stepping up the the capability of what these shops can do now. It's not
yeah,
so much
yeah,
just welding and grinding. Now you're CAD designing and all this stuff to make stuff work.
yeah. And it's you also see a lot of the modernization of, like you said, the technology. Upgrading to a digital dash or upgrading to LEDs instead of HIDs. It's um, it's still a very unique blend without again being obvious or stating the obvious changes in these trucks. But yes, technology has certainly um, introduced new art forms of art. I mean, you look at some of these, like you said, these billet arms, these billet parts. I'm like, dang, the amount of design and craftsmanship behind a lot of this. And I think at least in the lifted industry, you're also seeing a lot of people, decorate and have these amazing color schemes with powder coating, with with the the train horns.
Yep.
Um, I mean, there's like there's a lot of these modifications that you really didn't see even 10 years ago, 15 years ago. Yeah, the technology throughout the decades has certainly raised the level of quality and has raised the level of genius behind all these enthusiasts.
Well, I know the last lifted truck I built was in 15, and I thought every part and piece we could unbolt from that frame was painted or powdered. And then I think starting in about 15, unless you powder coat the frame now, it don't even stand out anymore. So luckily my last lifted build was right at the beginning of when everybody started doing frames. It's like I don't want to get into that, having to pull the truck that far apart to powder coat a frame. Like it was hard enough just keeping the axles and leaf springs and stuff clean on it. I couldn't imagine trying to keep the frame and everything shiny like that.
Yeah, that again, it was raising that bar, right? Like literally. And yeah, you're right. The Chevy you built, it was one of the pioneers of seeing that. And when you built your Tundra, you had your bike in the back. I think it's something that's missing in our industry is showing the practicality of some of why we modified these vehicles. I mean, at one point you would see a lot of big boats at the
Yep.
SEMA show, and that was something that I really I think of from time to time. Like, weren't there boats at the show at one point? Like, just to show the power behind some of these big rigs. Um, and so at least in the SEMA show, you saw a lot of the creativity of what you do with your vehicle outside of the show kind of disappear. But now there's so many consumer events nationwide that are highlighting that, or they finally get an opportunity to shine and showcase their vehicle the way they envisioned it, without a lot of the limitations that we get at exhibiting at the SEMA show.
I think Chris, Truck Guru, he's one of the few that still do the big, the boats or the side by sides or the smart cars on the roof, that kind of stuff. So I think he still tries to push that bar of what the vehicles can do and make it all match. So,
Yeah, you're absolutely right. That Ram that he built with the boat in the back. Not only that, but if you waited long enough, you could see the paint light up when it
yep.
got darker. And right at sunset, I was outside with him at the truck. He's like, "Hold on, just give me like 15, 20 minutes. I'll turn it on, and little by little, you can see the paint light up." And yeah, shout out to Chris. He certainly is. The truck guru. Like, he really pushes the envelope. When he did that Ram with the Jeep on the top, I saw that at AutoCon, or one of the shows here in Los Angeles, and I was just like, "That's insane." That was like 2016, 2017,
15 because it was in the
or
lobby with
15.
my Tundra.
There you go.
I remember him
Yeah,
trying to get it
but
in and try to get it loaded because he had to bring the dually in, then bring the Jeep in because it wouldn't fit through the door, and then had to move the dually to get the Jeep on it, then move it back. And I was literally like two vehicles over from him in the lobby. So
yeah,
yeah, that was
he's
pretty
he,
cool.
he he's crazy. Even that lifted smart vehicle, the Jelly Bean,
Yeah,
that thing was dope. Yeah,
he's on my
yeah,
list to come on. So it's just schedules are, he stays so busy, so it's kind of hard to nail him down. So, but he's on my short list of people to come on the podcast. So
yeah. I like how he every year he's like, yeah, I'm gonna keep it light this year with managing builds, and then announces that he, had 67 builds managed last year. I'm like, Mr. Light over here. That's light work. I'm like as a company, we stress over like introducing two vehicles at the SEMA show.
It's hard enough
Like,
as a builder in my eyes to do one, much less
yeah,
two. So I did two one year, and I was like, this is crazy because one was on one side of the showgrounds, one was on the other side of the showgrounds. Like they weren't near each other. Like it was logistics were crazy, but I guess he
yeah,
has people that handles it for him. So
yeah. He's done this long enough and has established relationships with a lot of great manufacturers that he makes it look easy. He does make it look easy. I tried tracking him down at the show to do a few interviews in front of some of the sponsored trucks. And he's like, okay, it's like, where are you at? I'm over here. I'm in South Hall. Okay, I'm in Central Hall. Meet me halfway. I have a vehicle right there. I'm like, easy enough, but it was like, we have to start, record, finish, boom, gotta go. And he was on his little electric scooter because
yeah, the little scooter
he
only
got,
goes so fast, though. I don't think he ever walks the show.
yeah, I'm surprised. Yeah, that we will. I'm sure we'll see a lot of more electric bikes this year too, which I'm
Um,
curious to see. Yeah, there's a lot of electric bikes, and if that'll make walk or driving the show a lot easier.
on the whole truck guru deal, let's kind of touch on the sponsorship aspect from a manufacturer. I know I did my one podcast on how sponsorships work on my end, like how that's one of my most asked questions from people, like, well, how do you get sponsored? How do you work with these companies? How can I get this? I go to the local Sonic cruise in, I go every 6 months. How do I get free wheels or whatever? Um, so I had that one episode about how that works. Well, then I, brought it up with Andy Grant from Fury on how it works from a company side. So being you're the one that handles that for RK Sport for the most part, how does someone reach out to a company like you if they have a bill that they want to use your products for?
Great question. When I started, I was asking every company, like, how do you handle sponsorships? Because I asked, and it was on a email per email basis at that point. It was like an interview process.
Yep.
And as a manufacturer, we also worked with a lot of the mutual sponsors, and so it was being vetted by other manufacturers as well. And when I began to present to, bring to the table potential sponsors, I had to do my homework. I had to really make sure that everybody was covering what we're looking for. And being that the SEMA show is the Super Bowl is the only trade show we exhibit at. It's basically the only show we exhibit at historically. We want our potential buyers and clients and distributors to see as many options as possible of every hood that we offered or every body kit we offered. So for nine outside of or just focusing on the SEMA show, for instance, as long as you had either a magazine confirmed over a booth vehicle, 100% sponsorship, because that worked to our benefit to say, okay, let's walk over to Ford's booth, or let's walk over to Anzo's booth, or Magnaflow's booth, and
Yeah.
and we'll have some vehicles there. And so it was very very strategic when it came to the SEMA show. Outside the SEMA show, you have about 15 of the premier consumer events that occur after November, and so we treat SEMA as day one. Your contract year starts at the SEMA show. Anything prior to that, like, well, it will be at the SEMA show, but I have a few shows leading up to it. We ask them to wait until the SEMA show, just because we know how risky it is to drive around a vehicle you're going to debut, or showcase a vehicle you're going to debut on the way to SEMA, right after SEMA. Like, I mean, God forbid something happens, but we've seen it. And so for us, when an individual reaches out to us, they especially right now with social media. Um, the numbers, everybody pitches the numbers game. I have 500, I have half a million followers on Instagram or a million followers on TikTok. It's like, okay, well, what is your brand? What is your brand identity about? Because those numbers dictate your brand. They dictate who your audience is. I've had athletes, I've had professionals in other industries reach out, and I look at their page. I'm like, I love your page. I'm a fan of your work personally. However, from a business standpoint, I see zero benefit to sponsoring you. Oh, I have a YouTube channel. Okay, well, let me look at your YouTube channel. So, it's like a job interview.
Yeah.
Why should you be hired for the job? When you get sponsored by RK Sport or any brand, you are an extension of that company. So any good thing that comes out of it is great because you're adding value to yourself and adding value to your portfolio. But anything bad or negative that comes out of that is also a representation of the company. Right now with the takeovers, I'm very critical of anybody that I sponsor or work with. Please don't participate in these things because if they see you and like, oh, I've seen that truck on RK Sports page. Oh, they're into
Yeah.
street takeovers. I'm like, no, no, we're not. We are against street takeovers. The only street takeovers we approve of are the actual streetcar takeovers that are done on the racetrack.
Yep.
Um,
Actual sanctioned
and
event.
Actual sanctioned event. So Chris and Jason and the team at 1320 Video, they do a lot of work to get these sanctioned streetcar takeover events at the airstrips, or the tracks. But yes, when we choose to sponsor you, it's based on a lot of like I said, critical things. How will you represent the company? Because at the end of the day, you're getting approached by multiple people saying, "I can send business your way," or "Hey, I can help you in my area." They almost want to be an extended sales rep, for the company. And so when looking at the resume, looking at at the channels, at the pages, it's like, are you really about it? Because if you're not, then I don't want you to feel rejected for my reasons. But it's like, honestly, you didn't bring anything to the table. I can't see anything that is a definitive um, criteria that just can sway me in the right direction. There are rare scenarios where I've worked with an individual, and it really comes down from persistence. They contact me month after month or year after year, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to give you one shot. And I've had a handful of individuals that I've sponsored where they've been the best brand ambassadors, and I've sent a lot of business my way, but more than anything, they're overall a great person online. They help people, they mentor people that are getting into the industry. Because at the end of the day, we want more enthusiasts. Whether they buy my hood or not, I want them to boost our economy. I want them to
Yep.
keep the spirit of modifying our vehicles alive. And if you are a great representative of that, sometimes I'll reach out to individuals on Instagram or companies on Instagram. Hey, I love what you're doing. I want to be a part of the next project that you work on. Like sometimes I'm the one reaching out to these individuals saying, "Can I work with you?" you know, just because social media has certainly given us direct access to not only what we show, but what a day in the life is for a lot of these enthusiasts. It replaced the forum days.
And when I first got started with this, there was no social media. There was no, you had to mail in pictures of it being your vehicle being at events and stuff. There wasn't, here's my page. So,
Yeah.
proposals had to be pretty extensive at that degree. So, well, so how do the listeners find the company? How do they follow you online? What's your best handles?
Um, Really easy. It's RK Sport on Instagram, on YouTube, on Facebook. If you can't find RK Sport, you'll at least recognize the logo. But for the most part, all of them are RK Sport at RK Sport, and you can reach us at marketing at rksport.com, and check out our website, check out our product offerings. Um, Starting next year, we will be physically present at a lot of these shows. We will be at every major consumer event out there. We celebrating 30 years. We want to take these next 30 years more serious and execute a lot of amazing programs out there. And see, like you said, just walk the show, enjoy the show, and really appreciate this next generation of enthusiasts that are introducing things that sometimes we scratch our heads and we're like, I don't know about this, but we were at one point, doubted,
Yep.
and here we are now. So I don't I don't I don't judge, or I try not to criticize a lot of new movements, because, like I said, at the end of the day, they are keeping the enthusiast spirit alive. Much like
Agree.
music. I mean, there's a lot of music where, like, I mean, take Eminem and Houdini right now. It's a 50-50 opinion on whether it's back to the golden days of hip hop, or this new era of, like, you can't do that.
Yeah. So you guys got a booth at SEMA this year, or are you taking this year off?
Taking this year off. SEMA is I feel like they're in an identity crisis right now, figuring out what they are. And a lot of companies are evolving, and so we will be attending the SEMA show. But from an exhibiting standpoint, right now it is a little hard to justify and bite the bullet on that type of investment in a big show. I mean, SEMA has presented something that no consumer event will ever accomplish, which is bringing industry professionals together for 4 days, 5 days, and accomplish what you can't accomplish year round. And so, uh, I, as an exhibitor, I just don't see the benefit right now, and return on investment as well, because of how evolved it's become. It's becoming more and more public focused, and so if it's open to the public, then there truly is not a lot of business happening. As a trade show,
True.
I don't see the business identity or business benefit from the SEMA show. They introduced the SEMA Fest last year, and it's a public event. They introduced Public Day on Friday, and so little by little, the public is infiltrating. It's infiltrated the show for a long time. I mean, there's ways to get into the SEMA show. There's ways to see what's going on at the SEMA show with social media. However, from a business standpoint, it's becoming harder and harder to do business, when you have so much of the public eye there.
The bad
But
part is every year I have to fight to get my media credentials, and I've been in the system since '04. Same business name, same everything, and I try to do it, and they're like, "Well, we need proof what you do and this and that," and it's like
yeah,
I've done this for I've this is my I guess been going to SEMA off and on for 20 years now, and it's like I'm in the system. Why do you need to
yeah.
still vet me? But yet you got all these other people that you just let in. So
Well, and not to mention, they know you. They're like, no, I know Brandon. I know you've been in the industry a long time, but on paper, you're a brand new person with no credentials. I've seen that happen to former employees of Mortar Trend, or former publications, where they start their new company, they start their new media company, and they get denied because they haven't reached the level of requirements to be accepted as a media, as a buyer, or just right now, I would be considered a non-exhibiting manufacturer. But at this point, everybody's a manufacturer. Even an influencer is a manufacturer. They sell their own products. So based on that criteria, nobody's allowed to attend the show. Again, like I said, I hope SEMA evolves and adapts the way we as small businesses have evolved and adapted to survive right now. There's a lot of changes, and we've also introduced we're introducing the RK Sport Garage, which will house aftermarket products outside of what we manufacture. Just because we want to continue to diversify as well as help each other out. I mean, the more business we can send to each other, the better.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
based on that criteria, yeah, like I'm not allowed to register for the SEMA show because of my history as an exhibitor. I'm like, but now I'm a buyer, or I can even, I can put out a few YouTube videos out and be a media company, but still, you're still a manufacturer. So they know me. They say no. And again, it's not about nitpicking on the politics behind it, but it's just like evolve with us, and understand why everybody is. I mean, nobody had a choice. It wasn't our choice for companies to shut down or get acquired, or just branch out and do our own, make create our own career paths. um, but at least give us the same opportunity you gave us when we were employed by a bigger company.
Yeah. Well, I definitely appreciate you coming in early this morning and coming on. Uh, we'll hopefully see you more at these shows. Like I said, get out there. Even if you don't do a booth, go get out and walk around to these shows.
Yeah,
They're well worth it.
I know. I'm kicking myself because I'd spoken with Sean at Anzo about Atlantic City Truck Meet, and I'm like, I'm looking at tickets, I'm looking at hotels, I'm going to book it, and then I wake up the next day and realize it's this weekend. I was this close. But you're right. You're right. Like I said, next year will be the year where we will be attending a lot more shows, and really getting out there and meeting all of our customers, dealers, and clients.
Well, I look forward to seeing you at future events, and I guess we'll see you online.
Yes, sir.
Thanks, Cesar.
Thank you, Brandon. Thank
All
you.
right.